The Galactic Empire had existed for millennia, spanning star systems that humans could scarcely map, let alone comprehend. It was an edifice of power and arrogance, its core built not only upon advanced technology, but upon the conviction that its dominion was unassailable. Every species within its sphere was assigned a reputation, an identity that the Empire itself chose, and once declared, it was impossible to escape. The Chthar were lauded for their merciless efficiency in war, the Trelka praised for their ingenuity in engineering, the Ulari remembered for their cunning in diplomacy. Humans, however, were marked differently. In the halls of the Grand Court, where judgment fell like iron, the word chosen for Earth's people was a single poisonous epithet: cowards. The insult did not erupt in a single moment, but was cultivated, repeated, codified. Whenever an Earth delegation came to the court, their requests for fair trade or protection treaties were dismissed with sneering remarks. You people hide behind others. You speak with desperate tongues and tremble at shadows. The judgment stung, but more dangerous was how it spread. To be known as cowards in the Empire was to be disdained, ignored, or crushed without consequence. For a fledgling species like humanity, striving for survival in the greater galaxy, the label was fatal. Back on Earth, debates consumed governments. Some argued to endure the slight, quietly, hoping time would erase it. Others demanded retaliation, though what could Earth truly muster? A few ships, a scattering of colonies, technology inferior to almost every major species. Yet in the darkest councils, in conversations conducted in hushed voices away from official channels, a different plan formed. If humanity could not match the Empire in firepower, it would strike where all empires were weakest, in the realm of fear. The decision was simple, though its execution bordered on madness. Humanity would not send diplomats to beg, nor soldiers to die. It would send two figures who embodied what humans had whispered about their entire existence. Not ambassadors, not warriors, legends. The first was the one children across centuries had dreaded when the lights went out, when closets cracked open or footsteps echoed where none should be. The boogeyman. To humans, he was a story, an invention of a mind to give form to unexplainable dread. But here he was a man, flesh and blood, born from shadow yet trained into something far beyond it. His real name was not recorded in any archive accessible to the public. He had been sculpted by black operations, sharpened by wars humanity did not speak of openly. His talent lay not only in silent killing, but in transforming terror into a weapon. He was a myth draped over mortal skin, and that was precisely the point. The second was far older, far stranger to the Empire's mind. Baba Yaga. In the tales of Slavic folklore, she was a witch, a devourer, a crone who lived in a hut that walked on chicken legs. To children, she was a warning to stay on safe paths, to obey rules. To adults, she was the embodiment of unpredictable, unyielding will. The woman chosen to bear her name in humanity's venture was neither crone nor witch, but her presence carried the same weight of inevitability. Where the boogeyman thrived in silence, she thrived in cunning, in turning environments and minds against themselves. Her enemies often realized too late that every step they took had been part of her design. If the boogeyman was fear, given form, Baba Yaga was inevitability wrapped in ruthlessness. The Empire, of course, knew none of this. When Earth's representatives arrived to respond to the accusations of cowardice, the Grand Court expected trembling politicians. Instead, the chamber doors parted, and two figures stepped inside, their presence heavy enough to still conversations. The boogeyman walked first, a tall shadow in matte armor designed to absorb rather than reflect the chamber's sterile light. His eyes were obscured, but the tilt of his head carried predatory precision. Behind him moved Baba Yaga, robed in garments that looked ceremonial but were laden with subtle armor plating. Her hair was streaked with white, though her face was unlined, her expression carved from stone. Laughter broke across the chamber, not unified but scattered, uncertain. The court was filled with hundreds of species, their features alien but their amusement familiar. Earth sends its stories, A delegate from the reptilian Zrath hissed, baring teeth. Have you grown so desperate you now rely on ghosts? Neither figure responded. The boogeyman's silence was heavy, intentional, and Baba Yaga's lips curved into the faintest suggestion of disdain. Their stillness unnerved the court far more than shouting would have. Silence, after all, leaves room for imagination, and imagination is the root of fear. The Chancellor of the Empire demanded an explanation, his voice amplified across the chamber. Humanity stands accused of cowardice, and for its defense, it sends this? Actors? Phantoms? Tell us, are you here to entertain us with stories? Or will you flee at the first sign of strength, as your kind always does? Only then did Baba Yaga speak, her voice low and measured, every syllable deliberate. You called us cowards. You mistook patience for weakness. You thought silence meant fear. We have sent two names that, on our world, mean only this. If they arrive, something has gone terribly wrong. If they are sent, it means mercy has already been denied. The laughter faltered. Even those who mocked now exchanged wary glances. The words were not threats, yet they coiled around the chamber, like smoke, intangible but suffocating. The Chancellor pressed further, demanding proof, a demonstration. Humans did not resist, they welcomed the opportunity. In the days that followed, rumors began to spread through the corridors of the Empire's capital station. A guard vanished during the night. Only his uniform left folded with surgical neatness by the barracks door. A delegate from the insectoid Skesh collapsed during a banquet, eyes wide, pulse absent though no wound could be found. Security footage glitched precisely at the moments that mattered. The Empire prided itself on control, yet something unseen gnawed at the edges. It was the boogeyman who moved in shadows, leaving no trace but dread, and Baba Yaga who sowed paranoia, twisting alliances until delegates suspected each other more than their supposed human enemies. The court convened again, this time with tension thick as fog. The Chancellor demanded explanations from security forces, demanded order restored. Yet every attempt to contain the humans seemed to unravel. Guards hesitated when ordered to confront them. Commanders refused to sleep, tormented by dreams they could not understand, visions seeded by a few whispered words from Baba Yaga. By the time the humans were summoned, once more, the chamber was subdued. The mockery had drained away, replaced by unease. The Chancellor tried to hold his authority, but even his voice faltered at moments, betraying the infection of doubt. He called humanity reckless, accused them of playing tricks instead of demonstrating real strength. The boogeyman finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but in the hush of the chamber, it carried like a blade scraping stone. Strength is not only measured in fleets and weapons. It is measured in how long you look into the dark before it looks back. The arena was older than the Empire itself, a monument carved from black stone mined from the bones of dead stars. Countless species had bled within its walls, gladiators and prisoners alike offered to spectacle. For the Empire, it was not only entertainment, but proof of dominion. To step into the arena was to accept the hierarchy of power, to prove that one's survival was permitted only at the pleasure of the court. Into this crucible the humans walked, not as gladiators or petitioners, but as shadows wrapped in flesh. The crowd filled the tiers of the vast Colosseum, their voices colliding in a roar that shook the stone. Hundreds of thousands of throats, some shrieking, some hissing, some drumming from within shells, all clamored for spectacle. In their eyes the humans would break quickly, torn apart for daring to stand where legends of stronger species had fallen. Yet when the gates ground open and the boogeyman stepped into the light, the roar faltered. He moved without flourish, without acknowledging the sea of faces, as though their judgment was beneath him. His armor reflected no light, a silhouette, given motion, while beside him Baba Yaga walked with measured steps, her gaze moving across the crowd like a knife brushing a throat. The first trial was simple in design but brutal in execution. 10 of the Empire's finest gladiators, bred and trained for the arena, armed with blades that could shear through steel, were unleashed. They charged, confident in their numbers, their speed, their raw power. The crowd leaned forward, eager for blood. What followed instead was silence punctured by terror. The boogeyman moved not with speed but inevitability. His steps seemed unhurried, yet his shadow fell across the gladiators before they could register his motion. One faltered, struck not by a blade but by a suffocating dread that made his knees collapse. Another swung wildly, certain of landing a killing blow, only to find empty air where his target had been, and a whisper of breath at his neck before the world went dark. The arena's stones drank sound, leaving only the gasps of the crowd as one by one the gladiators fell, not with the spectacle of combat, but with the quiet horror of vanishing into fear. Baba Yaga did not strike with the boogeyman's silence. She struck with inevitability. A gladiator lunged, and she guided his momentum so that his blade pierced his own ally. Another charged, only to find the ground beneath him slick with a substance no one had seen her place, sending him sprawling into the path of his companions. She whispered as she moved, words that none could understand yet all felt. Her voice wove into the gladiators' minds, birthing hesitation, then doubt, then panic. By the time the last of them fell, clawing at his own throat in terror of something only he could see, the crowd had grown quiet. They had not witnessed a battle. They had witnessed inevitability dismantle strength. The Chancellor declared the first trial complete, though his voice was strained and his eyes betrayed unease. Still, pride demanded more. The second trial was unleashed within hours, this time not a band of gladiators, but machines. Towering war constructs, each the size of small ships, descended into the arena. Their armor was impervious to most weapons, their minds driven by artificial intelligence honed for slaughter. Against such power, 2 humans should have been dust. Yet, as the constructs advanced, their eyes glowing with synthetic malice, Baba Yaga knelt and pressed a hand to the arena floor. The machines faltered. Their steps stuttered, not from damage, but from hesitation that should not have been possible for programming. The boogeyman vanished into shadow, reappearing atop one of the constructs before plunging into its sensor cluster with a blade so small it should not have pierced, yet somehow it did. The machine staggered, its lights flickering. Another pivoted, weapons primed, but it fired into empty air, convinced an enemy stood where none existed. Within minutes the constructs collapsed, their own systems twisted against them, their metal shells echoing across the arena like bells tolling the death of certainty. Whispers spread faster than fire in dry grass. The crowd had come for humiliation and instead received revelation. These humans, these so-called cowards, were rewriting the nature of fear before their eyes. Delegates from distant systems shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their minds recalling their own vulnerabilities. If 2 could do this, what could an army of such beings achieve? The Chancellor, desperate to reassert control, declared the final trial. It would not be gladiators or machines. It would be the Empire's soldiers themselves, drawn from elite ranks, armed with the deadliest weapons known. 100 of them marched into the arena, disciplined, armored, unified. Their presence steadied the crowd. Surely no pair of humans could stand against 100 of the Empire's finest. The battle began with thunder. Blades of plasma and rifles of pure energy filled the air with searing light. Yet through it moved the boogeyman untouched. He passed between beams as though the air itself bent to let him through. Soldiers broke formation, their training unraveling under the weight of dread. Their eyes flicked to shadows that lengthened too quickly, to corners that should not exist in an open arena. When one fell, it was not from a weapon, but from the certainty that something stood behind him when nothing had been there before. Baba Yaga did not fight the soldiers directly. She fought their minds. Her words slipped into their ears, words that echoed in their native tongues, though she never learned them. She spoke of failure, of death waiting at home, of children crying in empty houses. She spoke of inevitability, of the futility of resisting what could not be stopped. Soldiers fired upon each other, convinced enemies had taken their comrades' shapes. Some dropped their weapons and knelt, trembling, unable to bear the weight of the visions curling within their skulls. By the time the 100 were broken, the arena was silent. Not a roar, not a jeer, only silence, vast and unending. Humanity had not merely survived the trials. It had shattered the very foundation upon which the Empire's arrogance was built. The Chancellor stood, his composure gone, his face pale. His voice cracked as he declared the humans victorious, though no one needed his words to know it. The crowd understood. The Empire understood. Fear had been weaponized, and its wielder was a species once dismissed as cowardly. Yet, the victory did not end with the arena. Across the capital, rumors spread like infection. Guards refused to patrol sectors where the humans had walked. Delegates demanded new negotiations, not with Earth's politicians, but with its monsters. Fleets hesitated to deploy, captains unwilling to risk encountering what had broken 100 soldiers without raising a weapon of mass destruction. The Boogeyman and Baba Yaga did not need to fight further. Their legend had taken root, and legends grow without nurturing. The humans departed the arena not as champions, but as inevitabilities. They left behind no boast, no proclamation of dominance. Their silence was the proclamation. The Empire had called them cowards. The galaxy now whispered another name, nightmares.